Oh,
sounds good.
It sounds good. Okay. So now, and I should have asked the question before. Alina, is it okay if we start the session? Okay.
What are you drinking, Alina? Are you coffee, tea, energy drink?
Right now, just water. Anything to hydrate. Hydrate. You'd be surprised how effective water is at helping you with your concentration.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Just let a second before we start.
Mm-hmm.
I like coffee.
Okay, I would say we will start, and the other participant will join later. So good evening or good afternoon, still the afternoon, and welcome to this Fireside Chat event. There is kind of event that we organize actually like monthly. We invite leaders from the tech ecosystems and prominent people from the tech scene to talk about their backgrounds, their startup, their role as investors, and to share also with us some great insight and above all, to inspire us. Just to start, maybe I will introduce myself. So my name is Laure Poisson. I am the head of program at Reactor Berlin, and we are an acceleration program for pre-seed startups that are based in Berlin. We practically help founders to grow faster. So we give them like the best tools, the best methods, and we provide a large network to help them to succeed, to bring their idea to life, and to get or to be investor ready when they finish the program with us. If you have any interest or want to just learn a bit more about us, just visit our website. We also have very soon a selection night, so to select the best team that will start the next program with us. So you can apply until May 10th, and we are looking forward to great teams, great projects that also have a very strong impact. And I think it's one of the topics that we will have also tonight. With you, Alina Bassi, I'm very glad to welcome you to this Fireside Chat. You also have, or you are also committed, strong committed to Reactor Berlin because you also support our team as entrepreneur in residence. So you are a founder, you are an entrepreneur. You founded Kleiderly, which is a company that produces sunglasses from recycled textiles, so very interesting project. And you also co-founded recently Founderland, which is a great initiative that supports women of color to start their own businesses or to start their startup. So I'm happy to talk a bit further about that and to learn more about this initiative. And today I'm also happy to welcome Niels Westmeyer, who will moderate the talk. Will have the role to ask the good question to Alina and to make this discussion the most inspiring as possible. Just a quick information for people from the audience. You can, of course, ask any question you want. Just maybe write in the chat and we will pick some question at the end. We have time for that. We plan that. So we will hear and answer your question. I also, or we record this session. So if you don't want to be visible, you can just, let your camera off. That's totally fine. So thank you, Alina, for being here. And Niels, now I let you the stage.
Thanks for the nice introduction. And thank you all for listening. Very glad to be here. And I did bring some questions for Alina. We will talk a little bit about Kleiderly. We will talk about Founderland. We will also talk about women and women of color in the startup scene and startup space in Germany, especially. We're really looking forward to it. And after the introduction, one may ask themselves, Alina, do you still sleep, or does your workload is a little bit overload at the moment with all these projects going on?
I don't sleep much, I'll be honest. I really started to actually think, oh, maybe I'm doing too much. So I started to try and do even a personal timesheet to see how many hours do I actually work. It's a bit terrifying. Probably won't even share that.
So that would be my next question. What was the result of these term sheets?
Too many hours per day, and not healthy.
What is your usual day like? I mean, how many hours do you usually spend in Kleiderly? How many hours do you spend in Founderland? How many hours do you spend in just creative thinking? Maybe take us along.
No hours in creative thinking, unfortunately. It's really, it obviously depends. Founderland only officially started in January, so it's really difficult to say. And obviously it will change as time goes on, but it's really on and off depending on which project needs me the most at the time. So yeah, it's a difficult one to say, but unfortunately that doesn't lead to much time for any creative thinking. So creative thinking can only happen on holidays, if I ever take them, or weekends.
And what is what's the project which is most important to you at the moment?
I cannot choose both, and both are extremely important. One, from the sustainability perspective, Kleiderly is so close to my heart, and it's kind of the reason why I even got into the whole world of entrepreneurship. But being a woman of color and facing challenges, trying to raise capital, I really totally feel and understand other women of color's journeys founding their own companies. So sometimes I really go above and beyond trying to help, and then realizing, well, maybe I should try and be slightly more selfish and not say to everyone, yes, I can help you with everything, because otherwise I'll be stretched very thin. So I'm getting better at kind of saying no to stuff, but it's hard because you want to help people and you kind of want to, but I think there needs to be a way that you can maybe scale that help so that you're not just helping one person one-on-one.
Maybe a new startup idea.
Yeah, maybe.
But for all our listeners, maybe explain in a few sentences what you're doing with Kleiderly for the start. We'll just jump right in there so everybody gets to know you a little. Sure,
yeah. So Kleiderly is, I feel like when I started it, I was so naive. I didn't understand anything about the entrepreneurship world. I didn't even have a clue what it's really like to be a startup founder. So I went in blind, I'm going to be fully honest. And I just really felt passionate about trying to solve a specific problem. So I had an engineering background. I'd worked as an engineer for 8 years. I had background in recycling waste, and I thought, oh, this is really helpful. Maybe I can apply this knowledge to the problem of clothing waste. And I thought this problem is so close to my heart because clothing waste is something that I no, I definitely was probably a very big contributor to when I was younger, as a teenager buying too many clothes. So maybe I can help solve this problem personally. And that's what led me to found Kleiderly. So Kleiderly recycles unwanted t-shirts, unwanted clothing into a plastic. So essentially means that your old t-shirts could be turned into your next pair of glasses, but it could also be turned into your chair, your table, your plastic glass. I mean, anything where plastic is used could just be made from your unwanted textiles that would have otherwise gone into a landfill or an incinerator.
Where did you get the clothes from? Does one send a t-shirt and gets back a glasses? How can I imagine that?
No, I wish it was that simple, unfortunately. So we work with big retailers. So it can be brands that basically they have like a couple of different streams, right? So when they produce clothing, there's something called an offcut, which is the bit of textile that's left over when they cut different shapes, for example, the sleeve. So that's one form. Then you get like returned goods, because all of us tend to return a lot of stuff and they cannot necessarily sell it at the same rate. And so they have a high proportion of return goods. They also have just unsold inventory, because brands, especially retailers over COVID, had ordered so much stock that then just didn't sell. So it can be from brands, but it can also be from charities. We've partnered with local charities in Berlin who usually donate clothing to the homeless, but the quality of the clothing is so low that they actually can't donate about 80% of the stuff that they get. And so for them to partner with us was a huge sort of relief for them, because they didn't have to worry about where all these textiles are going to go.
And what about the retailers? Do they love you as much as the charity does, or is it hard for them? Or was it hard for you to partner up with big retailers as a small startup at the beginning?
It took a long time to get retailers on board, but that's not because they don't love the idea. They love the idea from day one. It solves a big problem for them. The difficulty was, as a startup, larger corporates are always a bit scared to work with smaller organizations. They feel like there's more risks involved, so they are less likely to jump and say yes straight away. So there's a bit of convincing. There's also a bit of building your own brand and reputation in the industry so that people will trust you.
Is it different from a startup which is just B2C? You are more like B2B2C actually.
Yeah.
How does that change the sales cycle as a whole for you?
B2B2C feels longer. Feels a lot longer. You got a longer way to get there, but the scale is there. So that's really exciting, because if we were just focusing on selling a couple of sunglasses on our website, it wouldn't make the same amount of impact. But us working with large retailers and saying to them, we can make circular products from your textiles and then scale that large, we have a much bigger impact. And at the end of the day, like, sustainable ideas are great, but if you're not going to scale them, then actually you're not making much of a difference in carbon footprint.
A lot of companies today are talking about how sustainable they are, and a lot more startups do the same. Like, every product is future-proofed, sustainable, or sustainable-proofed, I don't know, you name it. How do you think about that? Is it just a buzzword at the moment? And does it make it harder for you to sell your own idea?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in the industry for a long time, and I had done carbon footprint calculations like 15 years ago. So it's really annoying to see people now just using this as a buzzword, because it also then kind of dilutes the impact that then actual brands do have. I wish that, and I'm sure there will be at some point, an easier way for the general public to understand if something is sustainable or not. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of misunderstanding out there, and less sort of data on really like how much carbon something is actually producing. Because sometimes the best way is not to buy something new sustainable. Usually the best way is to recycle something.
How hard is that to get into the public actually? Like most people are buying t-shirts like every few weeks or month, but never or not so often recycled.
I mean, to be honest, I think if you think about like the world as a whole and the way it's changed in the last couple of years, now is still way better than 10 years ago. With the movement of Greta Thunberg, with the movement of Fridays for Future, and the understanding that climate change is so much more mainstream now is a good thing, because it's a discussion that can be talked about. When I was started in the industry so many years ago, and I was speaking to people and saying, I really don't want to work in the oil and gas industry because it doesn't feel right with my values. People thought I was crazy. They thought, well, why would you leave an oil and gas job to go and work in sustainability? Because there's no such thing as climate change. So at least that we're not facing this. We're not like, you know, trying to win people over like that. But we have so far to go.
What is your best advice for a startup or a startup founder who thinks, yes, I want to be more sustainable with my startup. I want to make a difference. Really do. I don't want to use it as a buzzword only. What would your biggest advice be here?
I would say really try to stick to your core values. I think when you're a founder, there's a lot of noise that can come from various stakeholders in your journey, whether that's an investor, whether that's a corporate customer, and you've really got to stay true to yourself. And that can be really hard, because as you start to scale, you know, sometimes the only way, or people think the only way, is to cut corners. But that's why it's important to like find the right partners, find the right stakeholders who are bought into your solution because it's game changing, not because it's a nice buzzword.
How hard was it for you not to cut corners? Because that's the easy way, obviously.
We spent so much time speaking to investors and really, I mean, getting investment, in my opinion, is a two-way street. It's also about, like I said, you really making sure, do they really understand your vision and your mission? Do they really want to make a difference? And so that means you having to maybe bootstrap for a lot longer, which is really hard. But if that means that you're going to build a company that's true to you, then I think it's worth it. So it comes with pain, and it comes with you going through maybe more difficulties than you would if you just accepted the first checks that you get. But I think if you want to build a business that you want to run for the next 10 years, then you have to.
So you sorted out big retailers in the process? Retailers
and investors.
And you sort out?
And I think, you know, you can sometimes just go with your gut, to be honest. You can understand when you speak to a retailer, you know, you can see whether that CSO is there because they just need to fill a gap, or whether they actually know what they're talking about, and if they actually know about sustainability or not. So that's when you know if they're the right partner for you.
Do you remember a scene where you just thought, okay, I'm totally on the wrong planet because this CSO is just talking, excuse my French, bullshit?
Yeah. And I'm not going to name any names, but it made me worried for that company.
Maybe we can just jump a little bit back, because you founded Kleiderly in Berlin, but you were UK based, you were UK born. Why did you found in Berlin actually?
Why? Well, I had personal reasons to move to Germany, but I think that when you make a big life change, like moving country and you don't know the language, I think it's easier to kind of disrupt your entire life. When you're making such a big change, that was so terrifying to me. I was really scared to move, because I had no idea if I was going to fit in, if I was going to like it or not. I think that kind of propelled me to even make then that bigger change of starting a company. So sometimes making a big change in one aspect of your life can allow you to make it in others.
And do you regret not sticking to a big company where you could now earn a few more $1,000 or euros a month?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm so glad I went through this journey. I mean, it is tough, I'm not gonna lie, and there's so many ups and downs, and obviously you don't really share the downs with the public, you only share the ups, and it's not easy, but I also think that I don't regret it one bit.
What was one of these moments that are more down than up? Could you share one with us?
One that definitely comes to mind, because it was really right at the beginning, was this huge like feeling of feeling alone. When you found a company, if you have this idea, you just feel like you want to share it with people, but you don't know who to share it with. And I was going through that plus imposter syndrome. So feeling really alone, but because I didn't want to tell anyone what I was doing, because I felt so embarrassed that I was going to even call myself a founder. And I thought, how do I have the audacity to call myself a founder? I don't know anything. And you just go through these like crazy like feelings of self-doubt for so long. And I'm sure that maybe not everyone experiences this. Is something I definitely did. And so yeah, that was really tough. And I think what really helped me was building my own network of founder friends, who then I realized, oh, I'm not the only one going through this crazy journey, and all these other women feel the same way. And so I did the Google for Startups Female Founder Program like in 2019. And it was the best thing I ever did, because it was what really helped me to find people like-minded.
Okay, that would be my next question. Did you just find them in Berlin cafes or Berlin nightclubs? But you said the founder program was a life change.
Yeah, I don't think I would have gone to a Berlin nightclub to find founder friends necessarily. I think accelerators is fantastic for that. You know, like all the accelerators I did, similar to Berlin, those people who I've kept in touch with all these years, they're still my friends, some of my closest friends, and they're the friends that you can share this journey with in so much more detail than you can share with anyone else, because they just know what you're going through. They're going through the same thing.
What was the best advice you got in this accelerator?
Oh, I don't know. It was so long ago. I can't even remember. I would have to make something up, and I don't want to make something up. So I can't remember.
So you started your startup Kleiderly in the accelerator, and then you were out there trying to find investors, VCs, someone who gives you money, because bootstrapping is expensive. How did you find those investors in Berlin, and how hard was that?
One thing I didn't know about until, and that's what I mean when I say I was really naive. I didn't know that the only way that you can get investment is from a VC, or even from an angel, to be fair, is to get a warm introduction to them. And to get a warm introduction means you need to know a couple of investors to begin with, who will vet you and introduce you to them. So at that time, I didn't know it, but I was going to like a couple of events. This was obviously like pre-COVID, so there was a lot of events happening at the time. And that, like, I happened to meet people at those events who I pitched Kleiderly to, and then I got really lucky that those investors, who are now some really prominent people in the Berlin startup scene, I just didn't know who they were at the time. They introduced me to a lot of people. But if I hadn't met people like that in that stage, I would have really struggled to find any investor to pitch to, because I didn't have an in. I wasn't from Berlin, didn't know anyone, couldn't speak the language. So it would have been much harder. Yeah, it was just this kind of serendipitous, doing the right accelerators and then finding the right intro people to like open the network to me.
Do you have an advice for finding the right network people? I mean, they're not just running around they're running around somewhere, but how to find them and how to approach them? I mean, do you just go to big investors saying, hey, I'm a one-man show, I just founded my startup, I need $5 to $10 million now? Obviously not, but how to approach those investors? Probably.
You need to find people who know them. you have to have a link there somewhere. So say, for example, there was like a big VC that you wanted to speak to. There's no point sending your deck on their website. They don't generally find good deal flow from their website. The best deal flow they get is through people they know in their network. So you've got to find their network. You could probably do that on LinkedIn and see who do you have in common that may know someone there. But sometimes you could be so out of network that you don't even know anyone who's in their network. So then to find those people, attending as many events as you can, trying to like say, for example, an event like this, if I was in a VC, then you could like ask me a question in the event and maybe I'd remember you. So things like that, where you're trying to speak to these people. There's office hours for VCs. There's for example, like Playfair Capitals does a huge office hour for female founders. Early Bird does office hours. So a couple of VCs do office hours, and that's a nice way for you to kind of get that intro, or get to meet them, or find, go on their LinkedIn and find people you have in common and ask them to introduce you.
And in your experience, what are the best kind of events to find those people, those investors? I mean, there are big events, there are small events, there are events in Berlin, there are events in Munich, events in Frankfurt, you name it. From your experience, where to look at?
I looked at a lot of local stuff in Berlin, anything that was held by larger communities here, or anything that was held by accelerators like Reactor. And there's a lot of accelerators who get this funding from the ESF who host events. So Reactor is an example, Berlin Founders Fund is an example, the Berlin Startup Stipendium hosts events, Factory Berlin hosts events. So you need to find those like key players in the network who host events and do your best to attend them, because the network, everyone knows everyone basically. Once you're in the network, you realize that it's big, but it's also fairly small. And so once you're in, it's kind of easier. So attend events locally, ideally. I think going for like big events like Web Summit can be a bit more overwhelming and harder to make meaningful connections, because at these huge events there's like thousands of people and you have to cut through the noise. But that investor at that event is meeting so many more people that the likelihood of them remembering you is probably low. So save money, stay local, and find them where you live.
Did you experience an unequal treatment as you were a woman in the startup space? I mean, it's getting better probably every day for women in the startup space, but how did you experience back then to get some money or some investment as a woman?
I think women have a lot of different challenges, women and women of color. I think as a woman of color, the first difficulty you have is that you usually have little or no access to any friends and family rounds. So you're starting your business from your own pocket and everyone else says, oh, don't do that, just take money from your friends and family. But if you don't come from those kinds of families, you can't, and no bank's going to give you a loan. So that's a real difficulty for specific demographic of people. And I had to do the same. I had to start from my own pocket, which is really tough to start. The other difficulty I faced was, I think I felt like it's also not just from the investors, probably also because, like I said, I was going through imposter syndrome. There's a lot of feeling like you need to prove yourself. And being a woman in engineering, I think sometimes I felt the need to have to prove my technical ability and why I have developed this technology and no one else has. But there was also a lot of questioning around, well, why hasn't anyone done it? Why are you doing it? And I had that question so many times that I literally doubted myself always. I was like, well, it must be out there, must be out there. And I mean, I filed a patent now, so I know that we were the first people to do it, but it took me so long to get that out of my mind because I was convinced that they were right, that I couldn't have been the first person to think of this. So I don't know if that would have been different if I had been a guy. I really don't know, but I don't know if it would have been any better either. And I think the difficulty is that what investors don't realize is what they say really can stick with you. So, you know, you sometimes feel like you take all of this negative feedback and you start to just doubt yourself. And it can be really difficult to get over that and then say, I'm going to dust myself off and go to the next call where I have to hear why maybe my idea sucks. But that's probably not new to anyone. That's for everyone to face.
How do you get over this? How do you get over this feeling that everything just falls apart at the moment, that the feedback is always bad, that the investors aren't coming? Is it chocolate? Is it alcohol? Is it just good friends, a good network? Was it for you?
I think you just need to sleep on it and say, you know what, I'm not going to let anything get me down. I'm just going to get up and go again. You know, if you let people get you down as a founder, you're not going to make it, because you have to be really resilient. You have to get used to getting knocked down a million times and get back up again. So if you're someone who can't take that, then it's not the right thing for you. You have to be very open to taking criticism. So again, that's a personality trait you need to have.
How many chats or how many dates did you have with investors and VCs until there was the first done deal, the first investment?
Close to 200.
And how many times did you think, okay, there's enough, I go back to be an engineer in a big company and that's fine?
A lot of times, trust me. Probably at least after the first 100, but after the first couple, I mean, that was just intense, because you don't know what to expect. You get better over time, and you have to practice. Then you start to slowly learn the game, and you speak to other founders and you realize, okay, this is what I did wrong, or this is how to play the game, or this is how you share your deck, or this is how much you share and how much you don't share. But for me, it took a lot of practice, of making a lot of mistakes.
What is your best advice, or your best 3 advices for a pitch or a pitch deck at the moment? Sustainable in the front as a buzzword, and then?
3 best advice for pitching. 1, I think this is probably, it goes without saying and probably sounds cheesy, but confidence is huge. Like, no matter how nervous you are, you need to come across confident, because at the end of the day, investors are risking their money or someone else's money in you. If you're not confident while speaking to them, then how can they trust that you will be able to execute and build a business with their money or someone else's? So confidence is key. Coming across like you know your stuff, and doing your homework is really important. The second thing I would say is, like, come with questions in your pocket. You know, it's not a one-way thing. You need to know if they're the right investor for you. So come prepared and ask the right questions. How long is it going to take? How many rounds of due diligence are there? Do you invest at this stage, or this early on, or this late on? And what, like, typical terms are going to be in your term sheet? Like, come armed with these questions so you don't waste your time or theirs. And I can't think of a third one.
Okay. I just want to jump back a little to what you mentioned before. Founding as a woman or a woman of color sometimes is even harder than founding as a startup entrepreneur itself, which is already hard. Why do you think that still is an issue in the startup space? And do you think it is worse issue in Germany than in the UK, or is it worse everywhere?
I think it's bad everywhere. I mean, the stats are like less than 2% of funding goes to women. VC funding goes to women. And then for women of color, it's less than 0.5%. So it's just a dire situation to begin with. And that's across the board. I don't know if it's worse in the UK or worse than Germany. It's really hard to tell. It's just shit everywhere, to be honest. And I think there's so many different layers to it. There's difficulties with that maybe female or women of color founders face when pitching to investors. Because think about it like this, you know, these people are investing their money or someone else's money, and when you invest money in someone, if they look like you, if they went to similar business school to you, or if they come from a similar network, they feel more familiar to you, so you're less likely to think they're a risky investment, and you'll put your money into them. If they're very different and you don't really understand their background, you don't understand where they come from, you don't really know much about them, it feels riskier to you. So it's harder, even subconsciously, it's harder for an investor to overcome that bias, because they just don't know what that person is like. And so struggling to overcome that can be really difficult for female founders. Of course, then when you get older as a female founder, there can be the struggles around, you know, is she a mom? Is she going to have kids? How does she plan to build a business whilst having kids? And you know, that can be very difficult as a woman or as a woman of color, because there's all these questions around, well, then how will they do everything? So I mean, that's all these reasons, all these difficulties with not being able to get introductions to investors, not having any access to these first rounds of investments, and then struggling to face bias is the reason why we started Founderland. And actually, there's this really interesting Sifted article that just came out like a couple of days ago, and I can share the article in the link in the comments. But basically, they interviewed, I think, like a couple of hundred founders. And it said that like 87% of all the founders, the one key struggle they have is bias. They just struggle with bias, because or lack of transparency in the whole investment process, or discrimination, or investors just being late to meetings, or not turning up, or ghosting them. So there's a lot that needs to be unpacked there, but sometimes it's just that one step harder for women or women of color.
And do you think you as well had a disadvantage in the investor scene because you had a different background? You're a chemical engineer, you haven't been to a fancy business school or any business school at all. Did that make a difference? For
sure. I really, like, sometimes I look back and think, oh man, I should have just gone to a business school. I would have made my life so much easier. But I mean, you need to also then figure out how your background is an asset for you. So the whole point of studying engineering is you learn how to solve a problem. Problem solving is like the main skill you learn. And if I can do that on chemical plants, then surely I can do that for a business. So you've got to figure out how your background is your asset, but sometimes it might just have been easier to go to business school.
And did it become easier for you after the first investment round? If at the first time someone gave you some investment, some money, has it been easier since then for the startup for you?
I think it's definitely given me more confidence. Like just going through the whole journey of like getting an investor on board, going through all the hoops that you need to get people onto your cap table. And for them to own your business helps you to realize, do you know what, I thought that I couldn't do it, but I can, and now I have the confidence to maybe do this again. So, and like I said, that's one of the key things you need, and at the same time you need to know how to do it, so now that you've done it once, you can do it again.
Absolutely. And you already mentioned it, you want to help women and women of color with Founderland. Maybe you can lead us a little bit through the idea and the journey so far. Just for I see if I'm right on the clock, we do have 5 more minutes before question and answer, but I think that is still an important topic, and I want you to talk about that. Yeah, so like I said, like I really struggled with a couple of different things. No friends and family rounds, no access to investors. And absolutely no understanding of fundraising or their education. And I definitely wasn't the only one who felt this way. And I had met this other woman, Deborah Choi, who I had actually met on the Google Female Founder Program. And we were just talking about how we had just done a female founder focus
program, and it would be nice to find more women who look like us. And at the time I literally only knew her. She was the only woman of color I knew in Europe building a business, and I thought, can't be that she's the only one. So we really naively again thought, let's just do a one-day event and get everyone together from across Europe. COVID happened, and so this one event couldn't happen. But what was great about that is it led to us meeting Stephanie, who was at the time running Berlin Founders Fund as the marketing and comms director. And it kind of allowed us to give a bit more time to like bubble like what Founderland could be. And what we've built now is a non-profit entity that helps women of color founders to raise capital. We just want to change the game for the way you see the next generation of entrepreneurs. And so we see them as being of all genders, of all races, of all different types of backgrounds, and being super diverse. And we are building a community around that. So now I know 150 women of color entrepreneurs in Europe, building businesses, building from so many different verticals, from climate tech, ed tech, health tech, anything and everything. And it's so cool to say that from knowing one, I know 150 now.
If you're talking about being super diverse, do you also help and invest in white middle-aged men from Europe? Or are
we
they...
don't invest in anyone because we're a non-profit.
Okay. Or do you help at least? Yeah.
Well, no, this is an exclusive community. We're really supporting this one group of people who 0.5% of capital goes to them. And
no business school allowed.
No. I mean, I'm sure some of them have a business background.
What were your biggest milestones with Founderland so far, and what are your goals for the future?
The biggest milestone was definitely that we got a huge grant from google.org to run our business over the next 3 years and build a team and build our community further. So it's so nice to say that we're supported and funded by google.org, that they see that there's this community that needs this help. But we're also supported by so many different organizations who want to, help this community of people, from the design agency RGA, who basically supported us with completely building our brand pro bono, to LinkedIn, who support us with support on ads. So there's a lot of huge players who are in this space wanting to make a difference, and it's so great to see that they want to do that, and that this problem is big enough to want us to try and solve.
Okay, thank you very much already. Looking at the time, I don't think it makes too much sense to just cut in a new topic just before the question and answer. So I would just jump into question and answer, and if nobody have a question, I still have 1 or 2 left, I guess, but I would just open the question. Not everybody at the same time.
As we are not too many also in the call, you can just like raise your hand or just like talk and not writing in the chat.
I do have a boring question. I keep wondering how you pronounce the name in English.
What the name of what of my startup?
Kleiderly. Yeah.
Kleiderly. Exactly the same.
Because the name I thought was something to do with I mean, I know it's got to do with clothes, but I mean, there's something called Kleiderkreise, so I thought it was more to do with that.
No, so the name actually, like the way we decided to like find the name is, for me, it's interesting as a non-German speaker to move to a country and build a business. So I thought, do you know what, I'm going to give the country a kind of ode by saying that, the name is going to be a German name. And so Kleider means clothing, obviously, in German. And I thought, why not add an ly? So it's interesting because I know that and now I know that in Germany, if you add ly, that means you're making something small. But in English, no one knows that. No one knows that in the rest of the world. So I love the name. And one huge benefit of it was that no one has this name. So now we're plastered all over Google, and we have all the domains and the usernames for all the different social profiles, which is really important.
Where did the name come from? Did you make it up yourself, or did you just have okay, or was it an idea of a friend or something that just
It was a lot of brainstorming. But sometimes with like some names just stick, so you kind of need to like brainstorm and then sit with it and see what you remember or what feels natural.
And maybe I continue. Hi, Alina. Thanks a lot. It was really inspiring. The energy that you transport is really amazing, and congrats to everything you achieved so far. I would maybe it's going to destroy the mood of all the audience, but you mentioned earlier the oil and gas industry, like the worst industry in the world, and I was fleeing it. I think over the last 2 months, the view of that kind of industry kind of changed a little bit. Same with the military industry overall. And the general question that I have on that is kind of how can we be sure that we actually, if you talk about sustainability, that we are actually not forgetting the stuff that allows us actually to think about sustainability, and how to balance that, and specifically the weapons industry. Like I remember knowing somebody who worked for a tank building company. So he was, up until two months ago, that person was the worst person in the world. You say, how can you build tanks? Now all that changed, and the question is, how can we as a society and as a diverse society make sure that we don't give up on some of the topics that just make us live, and not judge people who actually support the basis of our society.
I think you're right. I mean, that's how I think I dealt with being in the industry. Was like, well, we need energy, right? So we need to get it from somewhere. So I'm going to work in the industry the way we need it from. But at the same time, I think you do need to think, is this what I want to do all the time? And also, as a society, we as a whole need to think, how can we reduce our energy usage and our energy consumption? And if we can do that, then it'll be easier for us to switch to different forms of energy. But nothing is going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long time for us to kind of really see this transition. But it's a combination of us using less, being less selfish when it comes to certain actions that we do in our day-to-day lives, because there's no way that the world will change overnight. We all have to take those small actions, and they really will make a difference if we all do them together. And then at the same time, we invest a lot of money in all the different alternative technologies that are out there. And we can then slowly reduce our reliance and dependence on oil and gas.
And what is your biggest, please, Tobias. I would have a total different topic, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying thank you, because in the end, it's let's put it, maybe get into a little bit of a discussion there. I think that the final goal is clear to everybody. The question is just how can we get there while not basically losing our economic basis also, and our societal values, to actually even get that, do these 10 steps there, because right now we need to do 3 steps. And it's and also public opinion management, I think, is always kind of the example. I mean, you're mainly based in the UK. I mean, in Germany, we shut off all the nuclear power plants out of whatever reasoning at the time. If we would still have them, we would have much less of a problem in today's situation. So it's, the question is always, how do you communicate also a transition while not losing sight of the vision?
I know. I mean, It's a difficult one. I wish I had an answer. I think if I had an answer, I would make a lot of money right now too, you know. So clearly not many people have thought of an answer to this. But everyone needs to be open-minded. And I do agree that we do need to think of the economic aspect. But we also need to think, how have our lives changed in the past years or the past generation? I mean, is it normal to live at the speed we do? Is it normal to consume at the speed we do? Why do we always just want more and more? Like, why not try and go back to buying less, to traveling less, to just living a bit of a slower life? Yes, that will have an economic impact, but maybe we need to take the hit. I mean, we did it during COVID, so why would we suddenly then go back to normal or even worse?
Yeah, I fully agreed with you, but that's not what I meant with the economic impact. It's just if you basically lose our capabilities in oil and gas, we just will be freezing for the next 10 years till renewable energy has come to that level. And that's not something that's a realistic scenario.
But I think recently, I think it was last week in the US, they had the largest proportion of energy was made from wind turbines. So there are significant changes happening right now.
Yeah.
There just needs to be more investment in it. And there needs to be economies of scale. But of course, until there are economies of scale, there needs to be investment in those industries.
And
I don't want to monopolize the discussion, so I'm sure there's somebody else having questions.
I just wanted to add, what is your biggest sin when it comes to sustainability? Are you traveling a lot? Are you buying a lot of clothes still, not recycled? Where do you think you could improve? If you don't have one, that's fine too. Just wondering.
I definitely used to buy a lot of clothes. That's reduced significantly now. I was a huge contributor to this for a long time before I founded Kleiderly, obviously. But I think it was hard, because I think when fast fashion kind of started off, as a younger, late teenager in your early 20s, you're like, oh my God, wow, I can buy so many clothes for such little money, and I can have a new outfit every other week in university and stuff. So I was really bad, but I don't care so much anymore. Everyone sees me always wearing pretty much the same stuff. So I think I'm much better now.
Okay, thank you. We have another question.
So I think my name is Kwabna, and from Social Entrepreneurship Hub, which is based in Ghana. And I saw your posts through a friend who shared it on LinkedIn. And the question I want to ask, I think it's something that you just touched on it, and probably if you would expatiate a bit on it, has to do with, you talked about, it's like sustainable products are nice, but if you cannot scale, I think that is the biggest challenge that across markets, you find a lot of young people trying to start something. When the fanfare is over, then it becomes a problem, because scaling becomes that headache. So because usually we do buy them one-off because we want to be sympathetic that, oh, I love sustainability, so I'm buying one for you. But afterwards, it's not something that probably we use or even we go to buy again. So how were you able to like sail through this kind of hurdle?
I think that, thank you for your question, by the way. I think that in an ideal world, and this is probably not going to be very popular to any brand or retailer, I think that every retailer or brand has a responsibility to take back everything that they sell and then recycle it. And that's what we do at Kleiderly. So actually, it looks like we're a direct consumer brand, but we are actually only a B2B company now. We're just going through a whole website shift. But any glasses that we have sold in the past, people can send it back to us and we'll recycle it into our material again. And I think every brand needs to be able to do that, to say that we're not just going to take responsibility of this product once you've bought it, but actually we're going to do our best to repair it if you want to keep it, or we're going to do our best to take it back and we'll be responsible for recycling it. because it's not fair to consumers to put the pressure on them and for them to try and even navigate the dirty world of recycling. It's really difficult. And I think for all these new brands coming up, they need to pave the way, because if they pave the way and they change the way that this game is being played, then I think that there's a lot more pressure on larger brands to do the same. So anyone starting a new sustainable brand, I would say only do it if you're going to really make sure that you keep that product for a long time, or you figure out what you're going to do with that product once it's done, or once it's like not needed anymore.
Thank you.
Do we have more questions in the round? Still 3 minutes to go. If you want any questions to ask them now.
Maybe Alina, just a question: who is also like behind Kleiderly? And did you start alone to establish the company, and what kind of support do you have also in team?
So I started with my husband, which was really nice. He has a background in marketing and also supports the React Berlin team as a marketing coach. So his background in marketing and understanding of business was really important, because I didn't have that background. My background is really engineering. So that was important to have this kind of like diverse skill set, because you need skills that complement each other. And of course, as husband and wife, I mean, you know each other better than anyone else, so it was easier to find a co-founder. Otherwise, when you're working with co-founders who you don't know, there's so many more like layers to it, because you don't know how you might work together. So it was great to have him to start with, and we have a good team who supports us with so many different aspects of the business. And I think it's really important to find those right people who add those key skill sets that you're looking for. I would also say that like you should look for investors who also have those skill sets, because our investors who we have on board, they're not just investors, they really want to help us. So they're not just helping us themselves as the partners, but even their team. Everyone in their team wants to support us with everything from marketing, sales, to branding, to supporting us with social media and everything. So finding the right investors is important, because if they can give you all of that support, then you don't even need to hire extra people. You kind of have a whole load of people who are already invested in your company supporting you.
You said it was easier to found like with your partner. It's another challenge, or it can be also very challenging.
I think it's easier. I think it depends on who you are as a person, but like I'm the kind of person who struggles to be completely honest with someone where I'm not very comfortable around them. So anyone who you find as a co-founder, you should really know them for as long as possible, because the journey is a long one. And if you don't feel comfortable like confronting them if you're not happy with something, or kind of having those difficult situations or difficult conversations, then it's hard. Whereas with your partner, you do that all the time anyway, so it's a bit easier.
Do we have any question or comments from the audience? No. Otherwise, I will thank you, Alina, for your time for this inspiring talk, and giving us some more insights about Kleiderly, about Founderland, about your vision also on sustainability and in the field of fashion, but not only. Thank you for supporting also Reactor and our teams. And thank you, Niels, for the great moderation tonight, and for all the people from the audience. We just record the video, so we will be happy also to share this with you. Stay tuned. We have also another fireside chat next month with Tina Dreimann. She's the founder of Better Venture, which is a business angel network for impact projects. So we will stay or remind in this topic, impact and sustainability. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for the organization. It was great. And thank you, Alina.
Thank you all. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.